Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the CONVO Couch. I am Fiorella, and we have a special guest today. His name is Encore Patel. He's a longtime friend of the revolution. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
So Encore is here because we're going to just talk about a few things. Specifically right now, as many of you know, Bernie Sanders is surging in every poll. He's number one in Iowa by a large margin. He's number one in New Hampshire also by a large margin. Those two are the first states. He has kept rising in Nevada, California. He's also number one here.
He's doing well in Texas.
Texas. I was just going to say Texas. But as we've seen him surge, we've also seen this coordinated effort to stop him. And we knew about this, right?
We knew it was coming.
The Stop Sanders movement was something that was obvious. There was Obama was said to have involved himself too. We saw what Hillary Clinton went out and said that nobody liked him. We saw what happened with Elizabeth Warren sort of turning on him. And so ever since then, there's been like this effort that's very obvious to stop him. Now, the campaign raised about $700,000 since the attacks surged, and they issued this letter talking about it, how they, how this is one of the things that happened, and even that has gone up since then. So they had it went up to $1.3 million from 70,000 different donations, and that is as of that was 3 p.m. on Tuesday. So obviously this isn't working because I think the more you attack Bernie supporters, and I'll ask you that, the more they seem to kind of just donate to Bernie.
Yeah, not just donate. We get entrenched. We do the research. We figure out what the attacks are. And again, they tend to be fake news. They tend to be spurious. They tend to be just like emotional or just empty attacks. And that, again, encourages us to double down to support our candidate because I think that actually happens across most candidates. When your candidate is attacked, you tend to defend and show up more, donate more, volunteer more. And Bernie Sanders fans, burners, we do that too.
And that's the thing. Like Bernie Sanders has that because his base is a lot of people that are working class, a lot of middle class, working class people. So he doesn't necessarily have to go to a lobbyist and be like, hey, give me more money. It just happens naturally. Brian Noble's also pretty much verified the 1.3 in 24 hours since this ad by the, quote, Democratic Majority for Israel. And we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit more. And that was first mentioned by this guy, Melbourne Cole is his name. But let's look at exactly what they've been doing, because some of our usual suspects have been the ones that are attacking Bernie Sanders as of late. And one of these people is Neera Tanden. None other than Neera Tanden. So she said, as you're relentlessly attacking Dems running in the primary, try to remember Trump is president. And with a good economy and the electoral college slant, can get reelected if the Dem nominee is weakened even before the general. And she goes on to talk about, tweeters are now more gleefully attacking the staff of candidates. Some misogynists are going after their past relationships. That is obviously insane. I am asking people to snap out of that level of insanity and come up for air. So she is basically saying, here we go again. These Bernie supporters, they're misogynists. They're attacking us. They're putting, what was the thing with Warren? The snake emojis. I mean, they just keep attacking superficial things. Like, obviously some people are going to be meaner than others, but the campaign has always stressed, please, be focused on policy, blah, blah, blah. Not everybody's going to do that, but the majority of Bernie supporters are focused on policy. It is the attacks that are coming this way.
Absolutely. It's like projecting. It's hypocritical. It's one side it's from them.
Yeah.
We can't say anything even factually based on policies, but then they can say that they don't like Bernie because he's old. Etc. It just goes on on where these superficial attacks come from one side, and then when we defend, they call us names again.
It's a form of gaslighting. And that's the word. It's what's been going on and on. And this other one posted by Jonathan Chait said many Democrats fear Bernie Sanders would be an extremely weak candidate against Trump. They are right. And so if you open this article, they start talking about Bernie's unpopular ideas. They mention banning fracking is unpopular. That
the majority of people support that.
They also mentioned that throwing people off their health insurance.
Even though the majority of people support Medicare for all.
Right. They frame it like you're doing something bad for them. Like, here it is, banning fracking, letting prisoners vote. That's so terrible. Let's see, decriminalizing the border, giving free health care to undocumented immigrants, and eliminating ICE. First of all, Bernie Sanders has never said that they're going to have open borders, which is a whole other attack from the right, which is interesting. The Democrats who claim to be the party of the immigrants and the working people. As an immigrant myself and my family, to me, it's like they continuously tokenize immigrants. Yet when it comes time to do something for them, they are now attacking from the right.
Yeah. At the Dem convention in Long Beach, Jorge Ramos said something like every 4 years, the presidential candidates, Columbus, the immigrant vote, the Latino vote, right? They're discovering it for the first time. They pander to it and then they leave it. And it's just been the way of the way that the Democratic Party has been operating, unfortunately. But in reality, it's immigrants, at every level that we need to empower and are pushing the movement and our economy.
Exactly.
Fam, real quick, going to this Neera Tanden tweet again. I can't believe she even actually said this, because what she's doing is saying that Trump has built a good economy.
Yeah.
And that the Electoral College will vote for him again.
Yeah.
This is kind of like a really big threat.
They're attacking from the right is what I'm saying.
Yeah, this is insane. I
they're
can't believe
attacking
this shit.
from the right.
Fucking Neera Tanden. She claims she's a progressive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, third-way Democrats, which she is the epitome of one, with Center for American Progress, all these people, they are Trump Democrats because they obviously are giving Trump this facade of an idea that he did something for the economy.
Yeah.
When, first of all, the stock market only includes a very minimal amount of people. And, she knows that. I mean, she knows that. This is the problem. She knows that she's lying. She knows that she's misinterpreting this information, misrepresenting the information. And she doesn't care because at the end of the day, they'd rather prop up Donald Trump than prop up Bernie Sanders. And that's something scary to think about. This is the Democratic Party, the party that's supposed to be for working people, the party that says that Donald Trump is awful, a demagogue, that he, that's wasting all this money and time and energy, and Bernie taking him off the field to go to this impeachment trial. Yet they turn around, vote for his military budgets, and then put out things like this where they're attacking from the right and they're propping him up.
They attack from any way possible, and however disingenuous, whatever lies that they can conjure up. And that's why we stay calm. We go knock on doors, we make the calls, we donate, and we're going to try and get our guy elected. But they're resorting to anything and everything, and you know what? It's going to get worse.
Yeah. And I mean, just going on, Johnny, like article after article. This one says, Bernie is the opponent Trump wants. This is obviously a lie because we just leaked the audio with the video Johnny put out where Trump was telling all of his supporters at this dinner that Bernie Sanders was the only guy he didn't want Hillary to pick as his VP. So how could Bernie Sanders be the guy Donald Trump wants to face when he was caught literally telling people, oh, yeah, no, he would have been tough to beat? It's just it's too easy to call these things out.
Did you see that encore? Did you see that leaked audio?
No, I didn't see the audio, but let's play it then.
Yeah.
I'm definitely curious.
Let me find it real quick.
It was from like a fundraiser or something back in 16?
Yeah, 18, I think.
2018, they were having a discussion.
Hindsight, he wouldn't have liked to have Bernie
as Hillary's VP.
Yeah. It was a dinner with his associates.
Yeah.
And
associates, criminal.
His son was there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were all saying, "Oh,
and
yeah,
they cheated." The whole
Bernie.
big deal that they released this audio was to be damning evidence that Trump was trying to get Yovanovitch fired, and which he says he wants to get her fired, but he can do that. She's an ambassador. He can do that as president. So there's nothing illegal about that. But here's the video.
Had she picked Bernie Sanders, it would have been tougher. It was the only one I didn't want her to pick.
On January 25th, Joseph Bundy released a secret recording while the corporate media is concentrating on his comments on Yovanovitch. They talk about
they
Bernie
reckon
Sanders.
Bernie would have beat Hillary in them right now.
He
That would have been tougher.
Yeah,
I agree. Because there was no hatred.
Right, you're right. There was no hatred.
The millennials
were right.
I mean, she's
As great as he was, half my motivation working was not let her do it.
100%.
right.
I think if
that's
she
what I
would've
think a
been
big part of our
Bernie as
race.
vice president, it would have been tougher.
Yeah,
She picked a real stiff
Kane was what I couldn't.
But I
that
think
was a
Bernie,
plus.
because all those people that hated her so much who voted for me. I got 20% of Bernie vote. People don't realize that because of trade, because he's a big trade guy. He basically says we're getting screwed on trade. And he's right. I'm worse than he is.
Yeah, you are.
And we can do something about it. I don't know if he could have. But had she picked Bernie Sanders, it would have been tougher. It was the only one I didn't want her to pick. Now, then people say, no, it would have been easier because then her sort of establishment, normal Democrats would have come to me. So she may have lost a lot of votes, too.
You're right, so you don't know.
I don't understand.
I think the Democrats, the only thing they do well is they stick together. So I
And
don't
then
know.
they go on.
they do. They're really.
And Hillary have, why is he not
He should be
speaking
going
up for
crazy.
himself?
He should be going
Because
crazy.
Is
they
Bernie
took him in
going to be... It is funny how he has not gone crazy, right?
because they took him in a locked room. They had a conversation. with
They
him.
pay it.
Of course.
They have to.
Of course, they had a
He has
conversation.
3 beach houses. Like,
Of
He
course.
should be going nuts.
Is he going to be
100%.
running?
I don't think so.
I think he might.
You think he might again?
Because he does a lot of television. Usually when they do a lot of television, that means they're running.
Biden seems like he's
I like it because I'll be like the
I
young
hope
man.
Biden.
So
Yeah, I had heard the part with the ambassador and how they
Yeah.
use that as a. I didn't hear about the rest of this piece
Yeah.
about how he's afraid of Bernie.
yeah, you're not going to hear about that in the mainstream because they don't want to focus on that. They just want to focus on the Russia stuff and the Ukraine stuff. But this is very telling because this, unfortunately for Hillary, shows that Donald Trump has better instincts than she does when it comes to figuring out that Bernie was a threat and figuring out that if she didn't pick him or if he wasn't involved in any way, it would have been he would have won. He won. That's why he won. And also
Whatever
about
you
the
say
fact
about
that he was
Trump.
running. Yeah, whatever you say about Trump.
His instincts.
His instincts when it comes to this kind of thing.
In this specific situation.
Yeah, in this specific situation,
His political
absolutely.
instincts, those generally, just being able to triangulate and pick apart certain demographics and get
For
people
sure.
to support him. And maybe we can go into India later and
Yeah.
how him and Modi have
Oh
been
yeah,
able to.
and he went
just-
out to that big
Howdy
Texas,
Modi.
the Howdy Modi thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go into that a little bit later because that's really important to discuss. This whole Democratic majority for Israel-PAC, though, these people have gone after Bernie with a lot of money. And so they're set to launch an anti-Bernie ad in Iowa. This is the first Democratic group to go explicitly after Bernie in either 2016 or 2020. This is a sign of Bernie's strength in Iowa. And this is what the Democratic establishment fears. Now, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into it. At the next one, I have another one later. But basically, that PAC is putting money for Bloomberg, just so you guys know.
It's a super PAC.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pro-Israel. Okay, gotcha.
This other person talks about Bernie hasn't really been facing a lot of scrutiny. He's never really been vetted before, and people are now starting to notice.
What a
Which
ridiculous
For
statement.
the
after,
first time in his career, Bernie Sanders is facing scrutiny. What?
He's never faced scrutiny before, you guys. I just imagine 2016. It was all a dream.
Yeah.
It was like Lost, that last episode where they were like,
Oh yeah, it was all a dream. The dog was dreaming. And, yeah.
Forget about the dozen public elections that he's had
Yeah.
throughout his career.
Exactly.
So Johnny, let's just go over to who burns his tweet because here's the Democratic majority for Israel who had on Open Secrets is right here. They're right here. The date and the money they donated to the Democratic Party of New Hampshire. It was
October
the maxed
13th.
out donation. And then if you keep going, they talk about a problem Bernie Sanders seems to have on more than one front. And it's hard to see here, but they just talk about how the Joe Rogan endorsement. Now let's hear your opinion on the Joe Rogan endorsement, because for many, even some progressives, but mostly the centrists and the establishment people that are very huge on identity politics and have pretty much weaponized this thing, saying, how Sanders is at fault for accepting this endorsement because Joe Rogan has these alt-right tendencies. What is your opinion on that?
Again, I think it's hypocritical when you're talking about unity and bridge building and reaching out, and you have somebody like Joe Rogan who appeals to a different demographic of people. How are you going to throw that vote away? And on top of it, it's not like Bernie gave up anything. He changed his position. He compromised. It's because Bernie is who he is, so passionate, committed, steadfast, that Joe Rogan, who doesn't agree with Bernie on everything, was able to support him. This is the exact kind of endorsement that shows that Bernie can beat Trump. Bring it back to that previous conversation. Like, he's too far left. Why is this right?
Supposed right.
And he's not even, right?
He's never voted Republican.
He said some gross things about some groups of people in the past, which he's generally, I don't know if he's fully apologized for it, but he's walked it back a little bit, and he's changed the specific language, the hateful nature of that language, and toned it down. So it's like one of those things where now people can't grow and change and evolve their politics, and you're going to hold them accountable for what, and not just hold him accountable, but for somehow you're going to blame Bernie for what this guy said 20 years ago, and therefore you should not take the votes that he's going to shepherd our way. It's the most ridiculous political argument that I've heard in a long time, even though we've been hearing a lot of them.
And I feel like, actions speak louder than words, and although he might have said words, his actions, he hasn't voted Republican, and he's had Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard on the show, so
he refuses to have Warren on the show. He refuses to have any other
Buttigieg,
establishment.
Exactly.
Because they have asked. I want to point out
they've asked. What a trip is that? These other candidates want to be on his show. They don't want, and so now that makes him an even better target.
I would have loved for Warren to be on, just so people could be like, oh, she's here's the thing with Warren. She didn't even want to go on the Fox News town hall. She can't beat Trump. That's the thing. You're ignoring the other side of the country who you may disagree with, but Bernie went there, and all it did was be like, have Republicans be like, man, this guy isn't as bad. He's not this crazy commie that the mainstream media is painting him as. Yeah. And that's what happened with Joe Rogan's audience, because he has a vast majority from people all the way to the left to people all the way to the right.
20 million people end up watching that interview, something like 10 million, 20 million people.
I'll bring it up.
And it's ridiculous at this point to push that away just because of one thing the guy said. And I'm not minimizing what he said, but what I am saying is that I'm not going to agree with everything any person says. And I'm not going to cancel the guy because of one thing when the rest of his actions have said otherwise. And this whole idea, like what you were pointing out, it's hypocritical because we're trying to build unity, build bridges with people we don't agree with, as long as they agree with the establishment narrative of what we should agree with them.
And they're not going to. That's where you get into this this fake, reflection and looking at things in such a diluted way that it just doesn't even make sense anymore on its face.
Absolutely.
And real quickly, I just want to show, if you want to pull out some of the words Joe Rogan has said, why not pull out this one?
If you were in the presence of a woman who came over here from Guatemala, and she's poor and she's starving, and they're taking her baby away, and she's wailing and screaming from a primal place in her DNA that the one thing she loves more than anything is being taken away. A baby. Yeah. If that doesn't freak you the fuck out, you're not a part of the team, man. Mm-hmm. You're missing it. You're missing it. What are we here for? We're here for 100 years of whatever. That's what we're here for. If you want to spend 100 years saying, hey, she should have fucking broke the law, I don't want you on the team. You're an asshole, right? And I don't give a fuck if you're right or left. I don't care if you're religious, or I don't care if you're an atheist. If that's what you support, you're an asshole. And we don't want you on our team. Okay? But if you agree with certain economic policies that I don't agree with, and we could have a discussion about it, we could figure out why you agree, and we could figure out why people are allowing all of this money to get into politics. Why are we allowing all these special interest groups and lobbyists to interfere with our laws and influence our politicians?
Maybe this is why they don't like it.
All this shit that we don't want. Well, here's the number one reason. You can't just vote online. You can't just vote. It's not one person, one vote. Right. It's the Electoral College, and there's a lot of checks and balances that are in place. It's all wonderful and groovy, but it's not giving the trust to the people. Right. The trust to the people that they're informed, that they can make their own decisions, that more people should be able to make these decisions. But they're happening now. That 28-year-old girl who won
I know,
in New York.
dude.
28-year-old
That's it.
Democratic socialist. Whether I agree with her or not, and I don't know if I do or don't. I bet I agree with her on a lot of things. I think education should be free. I think we should figure out a way. If we could pay for bombs, we could pay for schools. I think this idea that everybody should have health care, it's a great idea. Who the fuck wants people to not be healthy? Who wants people to be hurt and not be able to fix it? Are you really saying that struggling people should have to pay exorbitant amounts of money to get fixed when we could maybe chip in and help members of our team? That's stupid. Fill it out. Figure it out yourself. I had to. You got lucky, bitch. You got lucky you don't have leukemia. You didn't break both your legs when you were 18 and your parents are dead. You got lucky, piece of shit.
And here's the thing. You made a good point, Encore. This is what they're afraid of.
Yeah.
He's speaking in terms, I don't want to say like, he's not an elitist pundit that has this like sort of like arrogant vocabulary. He's speaking to working people. He's speaking to all people. He's not this pundit that, you know, that uses these words, whatever. He's not a polished politician, but he is connecting people by simply saying, hey, like, let's have this conversation. He's not even using the policy points. He's just simply saying it's wrong to not want people to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that's at its basic core, that's the human aspect of it. And people like Neera Tanden, the Third Way, all of these people, they're afraid of people realizing that it's not politics. It's not a Republican or a Democrat thing. It's a human thing. And he's touching on that. And that's what they're so afraid of. They're afraid of Bernie touching all of those people and being like, oh, wow, he's not the guy I thought he was. And that's a threat to them. Bottom line.
100%.
Johnny, let's go back to that tweet, because here the Democratic majority for Israel has a retweet of Mike Bloomberg. And Mike Bloomberg is there saying, I will always have Israel's back. # United for Mike. It's in one of the... Yeah. It's the one where he has 4. He just has those 4 tweets. And
gotcha.
Yeah. And, you know, they support him because Bloomberg's surprising speech on anti-Semitism, Israel, and Iran. So he's taking the stance of a very pro-Israel. He takes a lot of APAC money, in case we're surprised. And so they've been supporting him. So again, just more information on this group, that they're launching an attack against Bernie. The board member was just appointed to the DNC platform committee by Tom Perez.
They're not connected. They're not working behind the scenes.
Not at all. They're just friends. Its communications director previously worked for, I don't know who this person is, actually. That.
Center
that.
for American Progress.
Okay, yeah. So,
Rachel Rosen?
yes, that is her. Okay. And so basically, they have this obvious interest in stopping Bernie Sanders. The political director worked for the D-Trip and the Clinton campaign, and that's who she is right there. And
so this is not attacking staffers. This is not attacking people it's just pointing out that they worked for other organizations that had policy that we disagreed with, and guess what? That carries over to their next position in their next campaign, and it biases how and why they take positions against people like Bernie.
Right. And it's obvious, like, people aren't gonna pretend that this isn't a thing. And here they are again, the Democratic majority for Israel, saying congratulations to our distinguished board member, Megan Stabler, who was appointed to the Democratic National Convention Platform Committee by Chair Tom Perez. So these are the connections that these people have right now. And to be honest, it just keeps going. And here I was not aware of this ad. The PAC that is running, it is a separate entity from Democratic Majority for Israel, and I have no association with the PAC. Still, to avoid confusion, I will be taking a leave of absence from the DMFI board until the primary season is over. It's because they're calling them out. They're saying you shouldn't be involved in this conflict of interest. But they are. And Paul Begala, who is one of these people, says, I am still undecided and uncommitted in the presidential campaign, waiting to see who will emerge to be the strongest candidate to defeat Donald Trump. But nobody's going to buy this. Nobody's going to buy that. And so, that's the reality. And another one right here is fun coincidental aside. Only one POTUS campaign has used the Melman Group services. One Seth Moulton, who recently, checks notes, endorsed Joe Biden. So I mean, it's not that difficult to make these connections. And here, the same head of the Melton Group, who consults with Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Pharma, among a number of other large corporations, just happens to run a second org/PAC smearing Bernie on the flimsiest of pretense. No conflict of interest here, you guys.
I mean, we're finding it here, and it's easy when you're clicking and you have time and look into this, but that's what they're banking on, that the regular people aren't doing this, and they're getting their information from the paid for and bought out corporate media, and so they take this tweets and this, this almost conspiracy-like cadre of folks who are working behind the scenes, and they take that as fact and as experts and people who know what they're doing and are unbiased when literally they've endorsed candidates, they've worked for these organizations.
Right.
I mean,
they're not literally saying we hate Bernie Sanders, but all their actions behind the scenes are saying we hate Bernie Sanders and we're going to do everything we can to stop him. So you're never going to get the people in power to admit blatantly that they're doing the corruption because they hold the power. So they're going to continue to gaslight you and say this is a conspiracy theory, that you're making connections out of nothing. Another article that they posted, and this is Holly Otterbein, who's not really a friend of Bernie. She's a huge Warren fan. It says, a poll commissioned by Data for Progress found that Elizabeth Warren would perform better on a 1-to-1 primary with Joe Biden than Bernie Sanders, and a Warren ally is seizing on it as evidence that she's the best equipped progressive to take on Biden. So they're making things up now because Bernie
What
Sanders...
if there's only 2 people in the primary? Like, what does that even mean?
So
it's
Bernie,
not
drop
that way.
out and let it be Elizabeth and Biden is basically what they're saying because that benefits us over Trump. No, it doesn't. Who are we kidding here? Poll after poll, it shows, even since 2016, that Bernie Sanders beats Trump by the widest margin. Especially now with the impeachment trial, especially when she goes and refuses to go on Fox News, especially when Joe Biden can't keep coherent sentences together. It would just be a mess.
And not just the polls, the freaking crowd sizes at his rallies. Look at that. The thousands and thousands of people.
Biden gets 100 people, maybe. If that.
Yeah.
And they fall asleep half the time. I mean, I'm not even trying to be mean. I mean, there's literal pictures of these people.
They're like, damn, I'm paid to be here, but
that's another thing that we could go into. Last time people were paid to go to these things, and let's talk about Andrew Yang, because even Andrew Yang has said that he wouldn't be surprised if some of his voters went to support Bernie Sanders in the last rounds of Iowa caucus voting. And this is a development that could strengthen Sanders' already surging campaign in the states. So, I mean, do you think Yang supporters, some of them might go to Bernie? I do.
I do.
I
think it'll be like between 60 and 80% of them. Who are they going to go to?
Yeah. I mean,
Not
whoever's
Biden.
still not Biden.
They're not going to go to Biden.
I don't think so. I mean, maybe a few. Some of them are conservative. Some of them might go to Trump. Some of them might go to the right or
That's
might
true.
not
That's
vote.
true.
But if they're caucusing in Iowa for Yang, then at
they're
the end
gonna
of
go.
that caucus period, they have to go to one of the other candidates.
Okay, yeah.
And if Tulsi's in the race, I think
Or
some
maybe-
of them
yeah,
would go to
a lot
her.
of them would probably go to Tulsi.
They built kind of like
That would make sense
a
also.
relationship.
Which
also,
wouldn't
right?
be bad for Bernie, I think, in the end anyway.
But
so
I think he's probably doing better than Tulsi in Iowa anyway. So if
He
it's
is.
like one of those ranked choice things where
then
if
it would
you're,
be Bernie. Yeah.
you got to go to a candidate who's doing better, not worse.
Exactly. So you know what? I 100% believe that. I think that's actually a good thing.
Oh no, he's unifying. Oh no, he's unifying people.
Oh, you can only unify with the establishment, though. You can't unify with anti-establishment candidates. And Yang isn't my favorite candidate by any means. I have my criticism of his policies, but he has positioned himself in a way, at least superficially, or at least on the outside with the UBI, and speaking out against the way the DNC has treated him as an anti-establishment type of candidate.
He's definitely anti-establishment.
Absolutely.
He's not part of the DNC establishment.
No, he's not part of them.
And talking about automation, like that's what like these DNC establishment people are looking forward to solving problems. Always technology is going to save us. Not really, not when it's marginalizing people of color and workers,
It's gonna
which
cut the
Yang is actually
middleman.
speaking to.
Yeah, it's gonna lower what they have to pay people, those big corporations.
Robots only take one time. Not even.
Exactly.
It's like their finances are so bogus because you got to maintain and update and all this other stuff. It's just a way for them to be inhuman. It's a way for them to attack people and poor people.
Oh, just keep them reliant
Robots
on the
are better.
system.
You kidding?
So, and just quickly, this article reemphasizes, this person said, when I Google Bernie, I find that he leads Donald Trump by the widest margin of all 2020 candidates. And this is very true. Bernie Sanders does lead by the widest margin. So this is why you can see all the attacks. Now, obviously, logic tells you if they're attacking Bernie, knowing that Bernie leads Trump by the widest margin, they obviously don't care about losing to Trump. That is a fact at this point. They don't care.
Pretty much fact.
They don't care. I mean, you as a Democrat, if you even want to keep your party successful, you're going to put the guy that's best going to beat the other guy on the other team. You're going to put your strongest guy. Bernie Sanders has proven time and time again he's the strongest guy. They know this. So they are avidly working against that because they don't want him to win, period, whether Trump wins or not. And that's something that I think Americans don't really fully grasp yet.
I don't want to grasp it. It hurts me inside. It hurts my heart. Like, these people would rather have Trump than Bernie. That bad? That hurts me. Like, I entered, right? I was an independent who became a Democrat because Trump won. There's two teams on the field. We got to be on one side. And if I'm still going to be naive on this and hope that these people would still rally and support behind Bernie if it's Bernie and Trump. I'm just gonna. It just hurts too much to believe that these people would rather have Trump than Bernie and calling themselves Democrats.
Well, Bernie,
and they're calling themselves progressive too. Some of these people.
Oh yeah, they're progressive. That word has been hijacked.
Progressive.
It's
Well, is that Bernie directly threatens their line of money?
Yeah,
their money line.
That's all.
And Trump has been boosting that money line.
Right.
Really.
Exactly. All these people, they have money.
It's all comes down to money.
Money and power, basically. So Elizabeth Warren has all of a sudden become a voice for all of the people who have been pretty much smeared. She said, disinformation and online foreign interference erode our democracy, and Donald Trump has invited both. Anyone who seeks to challenge and defeat Donald Trump in the 2020 election must be fully prepared to take this on, and I've got a plan to do it. And so she has her little plan, and then she continues talking. In 2016 election, we saw how digital disinformation was used to influence and suppress voters. She's talking about Russiagate. But 4 years later, we're hardly better prepared for it. Donald Trump has welcomed foreign interference in our elections, and if he isn't removed from office, he'll continue to do so. Anyone who seeks to challenge and defeat Trump, blah, blah, blah. So today I'm making a pledge. I will not knowingly use or spread disinformation to benefit my own candidacy or damage others. And I will fight disinformation aimed at my campaign, my opponents, and voters. I'm sending a clear message to anyone associated with the Warren campaign. I will not tolerate the use of false information or false accounts to attack my opponents, promote my campaign, or undermine our elections. And I urge my fellow candidates to do the same. So it's funny because she pretty much said that Bernie Sanders was lying when he said, no, I did not say that a woman couldn't beat Trump. And then she said, you're calling me a liar, as we all saw famously. How does she? I don't understand. This is, again, another form of gaslighting, another form of projection. That's what it seems like to me.
I mean, this is so tough. I still would rather have Warren than Trump, right? So I'm one of those people who will eat the pride and say, fine, maybe we had some disagreements, let's go forward. But just bringing this up again and turning it into a plan and a policy, I'm for it. Don't lie in elections.
Yeah.
How is that going to work out? It doesn't, again, I haven't looked at her plan, but I don't see any way that we're actually going to keep people from using the First Amendment right to lie. That happens. It continues to happen. I like Twitter. They're not going to take any advertising dollars for political purposes.
Right.
Facebook has doubled down on it. They're going to take all the money, and they're not going to check it. This guy, I don't know if you know Adriel Hampton. He's running for governor of California, and he's specifically running false ads on Facebook to show that it's a bad platform.
That's funny.
He's gotten some coverage for it, but that's going on.
Funny.
So what's Elizabeth Warren's plan on the fact that Facebook allows lies without checking to be paid for, targeted, spread still? This isn't going to do anything to address that in the next 6-8 months before this election happens.
No, and I think even bigger than kind of like touching on what she did to Bernie is the fact that this is kind of something they can use to say, oh, Bernie Sanders' campaign once again has ties to Russia, has ties to Putin, has ties to these people that are misaligning, right? This is kind of setting that up again, because what she's saying is this happened in 2016, blah, blah, blah. But we're completely ignoring what happened in 2016 was the Democratic Party interfered in their own elections. And so by her saying this, she's once again revamping the whole, oh yes, Hillary Clinton lost because of a bunch of Russian ads and Russian bots that came on. And so to me, this is sort of like, okay, now we're gonna make sure to stop these people, and we are already being smeared as bots, as people online that aren't real.
Aren't you a Bernie bro?
I am. Can't you tell? I'm a white guy, and so it's just to me, this just kind of facilitates that slippery slope into saying, oh yeah, like anything that seems like an attack on Warren, which is usually all policy, is completely misinformed.
And I really like what Ann Shridhar said here in the chat. Says censoring what Facebook, Twitter /YouTube can publish is a dangerous fascist slippery slope.
Right.
And they've been shutting down accounts on YouTube, without giving any reasons.
Yeah.
Tina Desiree Berg, her account got shut down, and she got told no reason. And you can see here in Warren's tweets, she's also calling on tech companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google to take steps right now.
Right.
To take real
That's
steps
censorship.
right now to fight disinformation spread on their platforms.
That's another form of fascism. That's another form of censorship. Once you start censoring people's free speech, then we end up, in 1984. We have Julian Assange right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And we have Julian Assange. We have Glenn Greenwald being attacked. This is happening in real time. This isn't a joke. And so for her to put this out, she's framing it like it's a good thing. It's not. I think this is an infringement. Where's pasta on our civil liberties? Now, we kind of spoke a little bit briefly upstairs about Israel-Palestine, right? What do you believe in, a one-state solution, a two-state solution? Do you believe there's even a solution?
Yeah.
It's kind of a complex issue.
When the Palestinian people are so at a disadvantage in every single economic, political, cultural, military way, I'd like to hear from them and their perspective, but Mahmoud Abbas hasn't been a good leader. There hasn't been legitimate elections. So the Palestinian people are lacking real, powerful, capable leadership. And what happens when they find somebody? Israel assassinates them. So that's like a regular occurrence. So that's part of the problem. Is there a solution that involves a nation state for Israel and Palestine? With this so-called peace plan, it's not a peace plan, it's more of a dictate, right? You've got Trump standing next to Netanyahu, who negotiated this with other Israelis and the right-wing Israelis on top of it, not our progressive Zionist friends. There may be some, but this has been negotiated from the right-wing perspective and then put forward as if it's a peace plan. It doesn't even include any input from Palestinian folks. And from the little bit of reading that I did, it's going to put into stone or just, cement 30% more annexation of the West Bank.
Yeah.
So the state of Israel is going to continue to gerrymander, cut up whatever remains of the Palestinian people so that they can't have a nation state. And in hindsight, that looks like, from some perspectives, the plan from the start.
Right. So ideally, a two-state solution would be equal, and it would have the voices of the Palestinian people be significant, would have kind of returned some of their control over their land.
Their sovereignty.
Exactly. They would have sovereignty. They would have the same rights. Right now, it's an occupation and an apartheid situation right now. And so that's ideally a two-state solution. That's what it would do. Israel would stop expanding, and the Palestinians would have full sovereignty, and everybody would live in peace. But that's not going to happen, because that's the problem. With the two-state solution that is happening right now, this is what a lot of the people who support BDS feared. That is basically saying that Israel's desires and their ambitions are the only ones that are on the table. Palestinians aren't sitting there and having this conversation. Like he said, they're completely put out of the conversation. So this two-state solution is basically just geared to represent Israel. And Donald Trump is painting it as a win-win when it's not. And the reality is, this is why a lot of people have been advocating BDS and have been advocating, some people, not all people who support BDS, but some people are supporting a one-state solution, because they don't necessarily want to call it Palestine or Israel. They can call it whatever it is. But it's really tough to convince me that we can have an ethno-state exist, a state that these people, and we've seen them on Facebook. We've seen the way they've shot at protesters. We've seen the way they shot at medics. We've seen Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, where they've literally killed journalists, where they've literally shot at the people trying to save the lives, the doctors. And this is something that is completely both an occupation and an apartheid. In order to fix a situation like that, you can equate it to South Africa, where you had to go and say, no, you cannot have these two populations hate each other and live in a place. That's not going to work. And so for me personally, I believe this kind of just proves why a one-state solution is the answer. But Israel isn't going to stop expanding. I mean, their whole goal is to continue expanding and expanding and expanding. So the problem is when you say anything against that, now you are anti-Semitic. And when you advocate for a one-state solution, that means that Israel is going to cease to exist. And that's not necessarily true. And, first of all, Israelis weren't even there in the first place. And we can go and argue that over and over again. But nobody even cares at this point. The Palestinians just want their borders back to what they were before. They want sovereignty. They want equal rights. They want to have running water. They want to have electricity. And none of that is happening. And I think putting this as a false scenario where, oh yeah, we're solving the issue is just ridiculous. And I think all of our presidential candidates need to be better when it comes to Israel-Palestine. I don't think enough attention is being paid to that right now. I think Bernie Sanders has sort of said things as of late that are better than what he used to say. And Palestinian rights are human rights, etc. And I think he needs to focus on that. And this is another reason why Donald Trump isn't the guy that was, pro anti-interventionism. He's making deals with Israel. We supply Israel with the weapons that they shoot these people with. We supply Israel with a bunch of money constantly. This isn't something new. So
it's just interesting the timing that also coincides with the attacks against Bernie Sanders by Democrats for what is it? What's the group again? Democrats for the majority of Israel? Or Democratic majority for Israel.
For Israel.
So seeing that at the same time as this, that raises some of those coordination flags.
So I watched some of Kim Iverson's. She had a little live stream yesterday about it, and she was saying that that the Palestinians weren't even brought to the table at all. It was just something that Trump came up with, Netanyahu or whoever.
If it was a real two-state solution that completely limited Israel's ability to expand, because this is the thing, they're going to continue to expand, and when you have
that's their plan.
That's exactly. So how does a two-state solution stop that? It doesn't unless you implement the regulations where they're not going to be able to do that. So,
and I even heard in this plan, Israel gets to veto if certain Palestinians can come back to the future state of Palestine. So how can one nation state veto other people coming into another country?
Right.
What kind of
they have all the
kind of fair plan is that? That's just on its face one of those things where this is one-sided, and I think issue after issue you look at this peace plan, this one-sided, and I think one of the words I heard was a dictate, right? This is a dictate from America and Israel to the Palestinian people. Take this or it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And you know what? Palestinian people aren't going to take it.
No.
It's going to get worse.
Exactly.
And real quick, I just want to show, I just pulled it up, the clip that we had from Abby Martin's Gaza Fights for Freedom, just in case people haven't seen this, because I feel like, we have a little bit bigger audience now, and I want y'all to see this. You go to GazaFightsForFreedom.com.
Absolutely.
It's only like $6.
Support her.
It's only $6. Everybody go watch it.
Everybody can rent it, or you can buy it as well. And it only goes to help her make more films like this, which is awesome.
So we're just gonna show this little clip here.
اسم عايشين اما احنا مدفونين بالحياه واحنا طيبين مدفونين من الحصار اللي احنا فيه ينفد من غزه لان غزه ما صارتش غزه صارت دمار وخراب ديار للغايه يعني بس اسم غزه اسم هيكل عظمي اما يعني ناس يعني مستنيه مبسوطه فرحانه ما فيش لان الشعب الفلسطيني في وضع كرب اسرائيل ضغط عليه حصار من شقه موت من شقه يعني احنا مش متحيرين من وين نتلقاها شو يعني بعاني من ضيق الخلق ومن ضيق المعيشة غير شكل. يعني الناس بتنام أنا بنامش كتر ما بفكر. يعني بعد مرات بكسر الدار بحرق الأخضرين من ضيق الخلق. اليهود من شقة، الحصار من شقة، الدور المهدمة من شقة، الأسر الفقيرة من شقة، يعني الشعب متحير. فهي يعني الحصار بهدلنا، ما خلاش يعني بنادم، يعني أكثرية العائلات سوءهن الوضع تبعهن من أسوأ لأسوأ.
This is the furthest you're allowed to get from Gaza. Putting your feet in the water on the sands of their coast is the outermost border you can touch without permission from the Israeli military. Most will never be permitted to leave.
So that was part of the clip. That's kind of like the intro, right?
Yeah.
That's the beginning part.
That's the beginning, and then I'm going to show a little bit in here, which kind of explains a little bit more. Here we go.
We are not playing terrorism or violence. We are under occupation. The Israeli continue their aggression against our people, killing, detention, demolishing, and in order to stop these processes, we run effective self-defense by all means, including using guns.
A diplomatic cable released by WikiLeaks reveals the truth behind Israel's rhetoric about Hamas. After losing the election, rival party Fatah requested that Israel come to their aid with weapons and military strikes to prevent Hamas from taking control of the Strip. As exposed in the cables, the Israeli intelligence chief told the US ambassador that they wanted Hamas to take full control of Gaza, telling him that if Hamas managed to take full control, then the Israeli Defense Forces would be able to regard Gaza as a hostile territory. Fatah fled as a result, and Israel immediately designated every man, woman, and child in Gaza hostile, and therefore everything a legitimate target. With this excuse, that all of Gaza is a hostile entity, they implemented the devastating blockade and began a regular series of bombing campaigns that took death and destruction to a new level. This past decade is defined by routine massacres on Gaza's caged population, always portrayed by Israeli officials as self-defense. With almost zero casualties on the Israeli side of these so-called wars,
almost zero.
Thousands of civilians in Gaza perished under their bombs in 2008, 2012, and the worst in 2014. Over those 2 months, Israeli bombs killed 2,200 Palestinians in Gaza, the vast majority non-combatants. A horrifying total of 500 children. But this most recent aerial massacre took much more than life and limb.
Well, yeah, that's what.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
and
tough.
You know, some I wish I'd showed it in back then. Some of the image, the filming that they did when they shot the press, the hospital workers,
yeah, the medic, yeah,
the medic, the handicapped people.
Yeah.
They had a Facebook group. The Israeli soldiers had a Facebook group where they were making fun of getting headshots on these handicapped Palestinians that were just protesting at the fence of the wall of the occupation.
Yeah. So this isn't something that is there are two sides. I mean, there are two sides to this thing, right? But one side is heavily.
Well, I say there's more than two sides, because within the Israeli population, you got to recognize that there's some people who recognize that it's brutal, but they're going along with the flow because it benefits them.
Yeah.
Some of them feel, and you know, actually, when I ran for assembly, I actually got a B rating for Democrats for Israel, because I was able to kind of analyze where are people talking past each other and where are they actual grievances and recognize it. Of course, other folks got A's because they were taking, you know, a pro-Israel stance without any sort of criticism. But if you can recognize people's, I mean, a lot of times this kind of video and reporting is just ignored, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, they're actors. Oh, that's
Right.
fake. Or
Yeah.
it's just
Or they say
so
it's fake,
biased
yeah.
and one-sided, right? Almost zero is not zero, right? So do we need to spend a lot of time looking at the few deaths on the Israeli side compared to the 2,200 on the Palestinian side? Where is that balance? How can you have that? But I mean, I think it's pretty clear that one side is bearing the brunt of
Right.
military violence and has no path out. They don't have sovereignty. They don't control their borders. There's no way to, like, the best land was exactly what the Israeli settlements went after in the West Bank, right? The access to water, the access to cement, stone, tools, all of that stuff is one-sided. So if you can't recognize that, then we're going to continue to talk past each other. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing. I think people are going to continue to be more and more entrenched on one side or the other. And the person with, or the organization, the government, the people with the weapons and the military are going to continue to impose their will on the weaker people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's historic. That's I mean, that's across the globe and across our history as a species.
And speaking of that, though, because there are issues, you know, in India that have become sort of similar for many people. Now, in the United States, a lot of people have looked at the Gujarat riots and then the Kashmiri issue, and have taken a strong stance. The progressives have taken a strong stance against Modi. And then there's the other side that's saying, well, no, it's not that black and white. And then, you know, they have placed Modi as equivalent to Donald Trump. And a lot of people are speaking about these things without knowing the history of India, without knowing actually very much about the whole situation. And so I'm glad that you're here because you just came back from India.
I did.
And you are Indian.
I'm Gujarati specifically, so the same state that Modi is from. So I've got family who are blind supporters, right? They love Modi because he used to be poor and he used to sell chai and he worked his way up and now he's the prime minister of India.
Exactly.
And he's from our land and he speaks our language, so we're going to support him regardless of anything. So I have folks in my family who are like that.
That no criticisms at all.
And damned if you do. But I was just in India for a wedding. I wasn't there for any political reasons particularly, you know, about 10 days there, 2 days on the plane there and back. And I read the paper, I talked to some folks. And the big issue that has, since Article 370 dealing with the special status of Kashmir, there's a lot of history there. I don't know if we want to get into. I know just like the Israel-Palestine conflict, there's so much history that people don't know about. And right now, the big issue that has been brought up is the CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act.
Okay.
And just brief outline, and I'll try to do both sides, is it grants fast-track citizenship status to certain groups of people, notably not Muslims, from 3 countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, from partition 1947, I think, to 2015. So if those folks who were refugees from those countries came to India because of religious persecution, whatever it may be, now have access to becoming Indian citizens.
Okay.
So obviously excluding Muslims from that is a red flag. Right. We should give refugee status to anybody who needs it, whoever's in harm's way for whatever reasons. But as the politics show, right, and the rhetoric is different at different levels. So Modi has been accused of being a Hindu nationalist and Hindutva and a Hindu fascist all the way down the line. When in fact, you know, you can debate that it's at a lot of different levels. I don't know if there is a thing as a Hindu fascist, really. I think it's against the ideology, the philosophy, the worldview, the belief system of Hinduism in generally to be fascist. But that's maybe a different conversation. But he was elected appealing to this idea of Hindu identity. And so that's there. That's a part of it. He's got folks in his cadre that are like the Steve Bannons, that are like the Breitbarts, who are using the dog whistles, who are saying things that are blatantly Islamophobic or racist. That's going on. There's no doubt about it.
Okay.
Now, is that rooted in some sort of perception of history? yes, right? Indians, especially Hindus, believe for the last 1,000 years we were conquered, colonized, and oppressed, and now this is our chance to come back and gain respect again. So that's kind of the mentality that some Hindus I know personally feel. So now this idea of granting refugees citizenship in India is played right into that. People are talking past each other. People aren't recognizing it. People are jumping to the conclusion, some of our progressive friends, that this is the first step in a slippery slope to taking 250 million Muslims out of India or taking their citizenship away from them. I mean, realistically, how would you do that? 250 million people, you're going to take away their citizenship, right? So there's other pieces of legislation, a register of citizens, a register of immigrants. But these three countries in particular have, had a lot of turmoil. It's not safe, economic, and everywhere. You can say that in India for different people as well, right? But as they fled to India, they've been there. There's almost 30 million undocumented folks in India. 30 million undocumented folks in India. Now, how does that play into this, what we talk about here, the pathway to citizenship for undocumented folks here? What is that pathway? How do we do that? Should we address it at some level? And so they capitalize on the fact that they were elected with this kind of Hindu rhetoric to say, look, and it's not just Hindus that are being given this fast track, right? It's anybody who was, not anybody, and that's an unfortunate point, right? Yeah. Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Christians, Buddhists, atheists, agnostics, they're all getting it, but obviously the issue is, why weren't all folks, including Muslims, allowed to get this fast track status? Some of the other points are, other folks can still apply for asylum and refugee status. And so that's, and I don't want to just be taking one side of the equation because like I was saying, people are capitalizing on this Hindu rhetoric to gain political points. Right. Doesn't that happen everywhere? Don't people in whatever country you're talking about capitalize on the majority belief system, tap into it, and then try to win elections in a democratic society? And unfortunately, we've seen that firsthand right here with the way that Trump and the Republican Party has
capitalized on that.
Yeah.
But it's smart of Trump to do that. I'm not saying it's, I mean, again, like Donald Trump, instead of going after Modi and having this one-sided opinion on him, he kind of used that, weaponized that to his own political for his own political needs, and now a lot of Indians support him, and this is something that's a huge population of people you want to support you. Now, as far as this CAA, it seems like a good thing for most people except Muslims, right? It seems like a good thing that you're going to give citizenship to all of these different groups of people. Now, where is the anti-Muslim or exclusion of them coming from?
Exactly. Isn't it kind of like they're kind of fast tracking it for everybody else, but then like in Muslims it's just the same.
Yeah,
it's the same.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Instead of like they're not like not giving it to them, it's like they're not making it as
as a priority.
A priority is the exact word to use, right? And that's their political prerogative. Now, do we agree with it as progressives? No.
Right.
But that's the situation on the ground. And now, how are you going to protest like out here to change that? And that's one of those things where, I've been on street corners holding up signs, and I know it feels like the energy's there and we make a difference in getting the word out. But then what's the actual way to help folks, right? We have this issue. They have this issue in India. The Uyghurs in China, right? The detention camps at the south of our border. I went to Delano, and I stood outside the facility and protested, and inside you got all these immigrants in cages, unjustified. What we just talked about in Israel and Palestine. Again, this is a global phenomena where, unfortunately, we can't get to our human rights, to the better nature of our humanity, because we're pulled down, because we're talking past each other, because we can't get over past trauma, be it us or our previous generations, right? You have that post-traumatic slave syndrome, right? That idea that passes down generation to generation, and that conflict between Hindus and Muslims has passed down from generation to generation, especially Gujarat borders Pakistan, so
Right.
Pakistan. So that's one of those places where there was a lot of violence and moving and neighbors against neighbors. So that did pass on generation to generation, and now we're at a point where, people taking advantage of it. What are you gonna? I mean, that's the bare nature. People take advantage of the situation, and unfortunately, people in positions of power stay in power because they take advantage of those sorts of situations.
Right.
Yeah. So I actually pulled up the actual the amendment thing here. So can you tell me, like, it wasn't just Modi who passed it, right? It goes through a parliament.
Yeah, India has a parliamentary system,
Yes, yeah.
and in these last elections, the BJP
majority
gained a huge majority, right? They won 300 out of 500 seats, right? Something
Wow.
huge. They didn't even expect it. And so with that, they feel that gives them the political capital to do this sort of stuff. So they passed this in the national parliament. And interestingly, states, India has, 31 states. I should know that. I think it's 31. But different states have either gone along with it or voted against it. So the way that it's being rolled out is states can provide a list of people who they want to get citizenship as per this CAA. So some states
fast track. Right?
So some states have given them a list of some people that they want to give citizenship to through this act, and other states have outright voted, we don't want to give anybody citizenship because it's not because of all this broader politics. It doesn't include everyone, and so I think there were 8 states that explicitly voted to oppose the CAA.
Or it's already too much population. Maybe they're like, we don't want any more refugees. It could be
India's a
also
poor
that.
country, right?
Yeah.
And Hindus tend to have a big heart, and Indian Muslims have big hearts, and Parsis and Jains and Sikhs, and India has been a place where people have historically fled to. Jewish people went to India, right, during the Holocaust and throughout the thousands of years that they've been persecuted in other places. So that's part of that. Well, however poor we are, we still got a piece of bread for you. And I think a lot of people across the world, especially poor people, poor workers, tend to have that mentality. So that has been the case there. But again, in Assam, in the east, there are groups who oppose the CA because they explicitly say we don't want any immigrants. They're xenophobic.
Yeah.
So you have that going on over there because they accuse vote bank politics. Let these folks in. Whatever government lets them in is going to get their vote, right? The same thing that the Republicans accuse Democrats of in terms of the immigration debate here, right? That same kind of stuff is happening in India. And so to just blanket, this is bad, that's good.
Right. No, it's
a
just
complex situation.
And unfortunately, we often get into that kind of discussion,
Tribalism.
debate,
black and white.
Yeah.
just because we don't have the time to dig into it. And again, I think I made my point clear. It should probably accept everyone, but that's just not where we're at. If everyone was included and accepted, I don't think there would be a protest, right? So did they want that? Did they engineer it so that this could become a point to, again, galvanize their base and show opposition? I don't know. Maybe that was part of their calculus. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe they thought this was going to fly through because giving refugee status to certain people is better than giving refugee status to nobody.
To no people.
Or giving citizenship status to some refugees is better than no people. But they probably knew this was going to create some sort of backlash. But I think the scale that, at least in the West, is... I was in Mumbai. I went around a little bit. I was in Gujarat. I didn't see any protests. There were some articles in the paper. I didn't see people on the streets. But were there? Of course. There's lots of demonstrations in different places. And in every single situation, we got people who act maliciously because they're bad people. It doesn't matter if they're Hindu or Muslim, if they're Christian or Trump supporters or Bernie. They're just bad people who act maliciously, and they feel good when they act maliciously, and they're just looking for justification. And unfortunately, our politics gives too much justification to the use of violence.
Yeah. And I just want to point out, though, when you mentioned Hindu fascism, because as you know, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has been accused of being a Hindu fascist, and she's not even from India. She's just Hindu by religion. I don't know if people know that. She's half Polynesian. She's not Indian of birth or descent. And so because some Hindus support her, and because she is of a Hindu religion and she has met with Modi, but she has met with pretty much everybody, What is your opinion on that? Like on the whole Hindu fascist? Like, what exactly does that even mean?
Well,
when people
right, we
say
know
that?
fascism, as
Right.
we interpret, is the merger of the corporation and the state in the benefit of the elite, generally speaking, right? Using violence, using nationality, using whatever means possible. In my opinion, Hinduism is mutually exclusive of capitalism, right? The way that we value life is different in an economic system that literally evolved by enslaving people, putting a value on it, and developing an economy versus this. And we don't have time to get into a whole Hindu course on Hinduism, or a course on Hinduism, right? Yeah. But just generally speaking, that idea of, you know, regardless of the fruits of your labor, the material benefits, you're acting because that is your duty, that is your purpose, that is your faith, and the actions that you take on in this life, the work that you do, affects your future reincarnation, right? Your soul, does it continue to be reborn in other living beings until you, and your soul, and your Atman is the word, recognizes the oneness of the universe, and you're released from these cycles of rebirth, and you attain moksha, heaven. Yeah. You attain oneness with the Godhead, the universe, the Brahman, all that idea. So in that idea, right, you can't put dollar value on life, in my opinion. That's a little bit out there. I don't think there's a lot of Hindus who would say that, but that's just one kind of way that I and one reason why I say I think Hinduism and fascism is mutually exclusive. But of course, people can bend religion to whatever they believe. Yes. They can use it to dictate, to organize, to manipulate, to shepherd the flock, to whatever it is, so that they benefit from their interpretation of religion. And I think, you know, in the hands of bad dudes, any religion is used again towards violence, towards fascism, towards the accumulation and the concentration of wealth and power in a way that I oppose and I don't agree with. So this idea of Hindu fascism, and the Modi government has in fact cozied up to corporations and big business, and they've fast-tracked projects that benefit developers and large corporations at the expense of some people. That's happened, but at the same time, they've fast-tracked projects that are supposed to build more bathrooms in India than in the history of the world was ever built. So, you know, can you use your, you know, public-private partnership to actually do good work? Well, he's testing it. And again, is it because of his? And that's everywhere, right? Oftentimes, these private-public partnerships are just face-saving ways to give a handout to a corporation. So again, when you're the leader of 1,200,000,000 million people, how can you be blamed or get credit for everything everyone is doing? Impossible, right? Yeah, right. And along with, like, the leader of this country, you're automatically in charge of a military-industrial complex that is killing people. That's kind of true over there as well. When you're in charge of that large of infrastructure, there's going to be good things. And did he, again, I don't want to get into supporting or opposing Modi. In the same way that, you know, even when we talk about Trump, I try not to support or oppose. I do.
Well, yeah.
But in terms of what they represent, what are they doing? How do we dig into the policy and the specific issues? And then how can we, regardless of our position on that one individual or what they represent, how can we unify? How can we talk about, as workers, as poor people, as people who are in it for humanity, you know, how do we take all of these things that we're exposed to and do better? Do better for ourselves, do better for our family, do better for even the person that you don't know. Are you willing to fight for them? You know, I am. I try to. And I, again, try to walk that line where you got to recognize people's perspective, why they feel that way. But then how do we bring in history, fact, perspective, the real situation on the ground, and then have a conversation, even with people that we disagree with? Right. I think I generally try to do a good job of that. Yep. But a lot of people don't even try. They don't even want to. They want to just start throwing stones or protesting in the streets. And sometimes protesting in the streets, you know, I've been there, is necessary. Yeah. But where and how and why is the fundamental question, and balancing that idealism with pragmatism, I think, is what makes a good progressive.
Yeah. And the other thing is that people don't like being wrong. So when they're told something and that they thought was right, and they're like, oh, what? It's actually wrong. It's kind of hard for them to put their ego aside and say, you know what, it was wrong. I was wrong. Now, real quickly, can we talk about Muslims in those countries in Pakistan,
Afghanistan, Bangladesh.
Those countries are effed up. Why? Why are they messed up? Why? Because of the American imperialism.
Well, this is before American imperialism, really, right? Like European colonization and imperialism.
Western imperialism is what I would say.
Western imperialism.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here we are again, where the U.S. has waged wars in the Middle East.
And then they create conflicts between
neighboring countries.
And again,
and a refugee crisis.
And looking at Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Bangladesh was East Pakistan, right? The way that the British partitioned India was doomed for failure, right? It was, how are you going to have, like at that time, I don't know, 80 million Muslim country on this side of maybe 600 million Hindu country in the middle, and another 100 million Muslim country on the left. That's one, right? And so there was a war fought between Pakistan and Bangladesh for independence of Bangladesh. Do we even know that history here?
No.
Right? Like, so the way that partition was done was, in fact, not the original sin. There was, we go back to every time we open our mouth, we sin, right? The sin of omission. What did I not talk about? What do we not take a position on that we should have? Yes. So that's a, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of history nuance to
the
situation.
And I think a lot of people in general here, even on the left, sometimes take tribal positions where they shouldn't, because they don't have the whole history. So I know you are a teacher for LAUSD, so you have something here called Fix LAUSD. Can you tell us more about that?
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I again, with this whole conversation, I appreciate being on. I think education, getting people informed, having real conversations, respecting people, building that foundation of reality. What is our shared worldview? How do we move forward? So I've been substitute teaching at LAUSD a year and a half now. It's been a real experience being in the classroom with kids. But, I ran for school board before. I'm still, again, I think education is a key to how we get out of this and how we move forward.
Right.
So I think fixing LAUSD is paramount. I think there's a lot of ways that we could do it. The initiative that I'm working on now is fixlausd.com. And simply put, right now we have 7 school board members representing 4 million people, 600,000 students, 900 schools. I work for one of those school board members, and it's huge. It's impossible for one person to fairly represent, and 7 representing 4 million. So let's expand the school board a little bit. Let's make it maybe 11. This is a conversation we need to have. It had to go through the state legislator, but expanding the number of school board seats would give each student, each parent, each teacher, each person in the community a bigger voice in who their school board member was. It would take power away from the charter school industry, which is funneling millions and millions of dollars to buy elections. It makes it harder for them to buy elections if they're smaller seats. Right now, the districts are giant and gerrymandered, right? Yep. Having 7 for all of Los Angeles, you can go from Westwood to Tarzana. You can go from Chatsworth to North Hollywood. You can go from Long Beach or San Pedro, right, the LA, all the way to downtown LA, and that's one district. How can you actually represent that? So I think those are some issues that we could address. And again, localizing power. If it's a smaller district, you have a better chance of knowing who your school board member is, having a conversation with them, actually getting them to solve your problems at your school site, right? And having worked for a school board member, there was a couple cool things that I was able to do because I was on the ground for that school board member at only a few school sites. I couldn't be at every single school site, right? And so that way, I think a first step that we could take to fixing LAUSD is increasing the number of school board members. And that's why I've got this fixlausd.com. And in the meantime, I'm trying to help the kids by being in the classroom with them and telling them that even the substitute cares about you and wants you to learn. But some of these 8th graders on a Friday, period 6, that's a tough situation to be in.
I bet.
Yeah. And, like with the charter school thing also, like by fixing the education, the public school system, you're going to give less less incentive for these charter schools to exist, because some of them go under the pretense like, oh, you're not providing the right type of education, so we have to provide this type of education. By fixing the public school system, they're going to have less of an incentive to go do that, and people are going to have less of an incentive to support charter schools, which funnel money out of the public school system. So that's a win-win in that way. So Johnny, anything else?
Yeah, I just really wanted to quickly show there's some breaking news coming out of France. The French firefighters have joined the protesters.
It's my dream we're going to do this
against
someday.
the violent police repression going on there. Here's some video.
Well, are these police hitting firefighters?
Yes.
That's crazy.
They're using the water on their
Police
own
are using
fire.
water cannons against firefighters.
That is crazy.
Oh, this is a whole new level.
That's what I'm saying. This is a whole nother level. You got government within the government attacking each other.
Well, because the firefighters are standing with the yellow vests.
They're
and
standing with the yellow
unions.
vests. Yep.
Because the yellow vests aren't alone now. They've actually garnered support from several unions.
It's insane. It's insane.
How come nobody's talking about this?
They don't want us to
I'm glad
get
that
any
you are
ideas.
here at the Convo
Right.
Couch. That's awesome that this kind of stuff even gets out there. Thank you for the opportunity
No,
to be
thank
on,
you for coming.
be on here and share we shared a lot of different wide-ranging series of issues. I'm glad that I knew something about some of them.
Yeah. And just a reminder, guys, I will be going to Iowa Saturday, and then the fam, all of us are going to go to New Hampshire. So we still have the GoFundMe. Please check it out. And also, we are on Rockfin. It's a blockchain platform, cryptocurrency blockchain. They don't censor us the way YouTube does. We're being censored, so make sure you're subscribed.
And they pay us fairly. Like,
Yeah.
YouTube is... They run ads on our shit, and we're not even getting money for it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we're
They
not gonna run
demonetize us constantly. Anytime you mention war, anytime you mention the yellow vest, it just gets demonetized. So thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the reason we do this every day. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Encore, for coming on here today.
Thank you,
Really
Encore.
Make sure you
appreciate
donate to the Convo Couch.
And thank you for shedding some light on India. I know there's a lot more to discuss. We'll have to have you back on so we can discuss some more. But that was some great insight on the CAA. I hadn't even heard very much about it.
Yeah.
So thank you. And from Fiorella and Jonny and Encore, Convo out. Bye, guys.
Peace.